A lot of camera brands like to do their marketing the same way Apple do. Drop new products that they convince you that you have to have and that the old one is now inferior. Well, this red Komodo setup here, it's not the newest camera out there. It's almost 4 years old now, but it continues to be a workhorse for the types of shoots I do. I've just got home from a travel documentary shoot, and I'm going to run through a common configuration of this camera that works really well for me and run through all the little tools I use on those solo operator, run and gun style, documentary, commercial, branded, etc. shoots. G'day guys, so I know it's been a little bit quiet around here of late, and the reason is I've had a pretty busy period, which is nice after what's been a bit of a slower than normal year, especially back in the first half of the year. Pretty much across the board, most freelance camera operators and other people in the industry I know of were having some pretty quiet times, so it's been nice for a pretty busy September, October, November. Been working on some pretty cool stuff. So it's nice to have had a busy period, but now I'm going back into a bit more of a normal pace. I'm gonna have some more videos to drop for you soon. But as a bit of a in-between kind of video, I thought it'd be cool just to run through what has become a really common setup for me that I've been super happy with in recent years. And that's this red Komodo setup I've got just here. And I'm just going to run through a bit of a breakdown of how I've got this all set up and why it's been working really well for me. This whole configuration and all this gear I'm using on a bunch of shoots, and I would say the types of shoots this is getting used on is documentaries where I just want a nice good run and gun setup that's going to give me some nice results and is good for a wide range of scenarios. Now, this is a setup that's not necessarily super stylized. I'm not using vintage lenses, not using too much that would say add character to the situation, but I guess the thing is with documentary, sometimes things are a little bit more observational and run and gun, and that's why I've chosen to use this setup on the particular project that I've been shooting recently, and a bunch of other week-to-week kind of stuff. So I use this setup on a lot of my corporate and branded kind of shoots where I just want a nice, clean look. I wouldn't say a boring look, because I find the combination of Sigma and red is just a pretty nice all-round look, nice neutral accurate colors. I wouldn't say it's over the top sharp, and you know, on that note, I heard a quote in a recent interview that was saying if the most interesting thing about your shot is the lens that it was shot on, then it's not a very interesting shot. And you know, photographers I know, most of them are not really giving a shit about what lenses they use. I know a bunch of photographers who are doing really high-end commercial work, and they're more or less just sitting on a full-frame Canon and a 24-70. They have been for years. It was, you know, the 5D in times gone by, and in recent times, it's the R5. I reckon if you talk to most commercial photographers, you'd probably find they're using a R5 and a 24-70 or something along those lines. So, you know, don't get me wrong, I love my vintage lenses and I love my cine lenses, but at the same time, it shouldn't be your entire focus. And you know, with this kit, for example, I think I've been able to get some really nice images out of these fairly stock, but super practical and pretty nice lenses. So, what have we got running here? The two lenses I'm going to talk about in this video that I use for a lot of these scenarios, the Sigma 18-35 1.8 and the Sigma 50 to 100 1.8. So they're both Super 35 or crop sensor lenses. They don't cover full frame, and even on some of the Reds that have larger than S35 sensors, like e.g. my Dragon X and a bunch of the other cameras, the 18 to 35 actually vignettes wide open on those sensors because they are that little bit bigger than S35. However, on the Komodo, it's perfect. And so 18 to 35 1.8 with the S35 crop, it's a pretty nice all-round lens. These lenses match really well. They're both from Sigma's Art series. They're both 1.8 the whole way through. And yeah, I just find them combined with the Komodo to be just a really practical option that gives me a look that I've been pretty happy with for a wide variety of projects. Now, some other bits and pieces I've got on the camera here. This is the Rode VideoMic Pro. So not the newest mic by any means, but I've been pretty happy with it. I've got the bigger size dead cat on it for outdoor scenes to avoid any wind rustle. One thing I like about this mic is it has the built-in +20 boosting mode. And now one thing with Red cameras is they've always had really weak preamps. So you need to get a stronger signal as possible into the camera in order to get usable results. So I leave this sitting on +20 and the internal meters set on 0 dB, so not applying any gain internally, because also the audio gain that Reds apply is not very good. But that combination, +20 on here, 0 on here, I get nice usable audio results. Of course, if it's way louder, I'll turn things down a bit, but I generally won't boost it. I've kind of gotten advice off soundies before that your signal's better being a bit on the lower side than you boosting it internally. I think you can always kind of make it a little bit louder if it's nice and clean, but Reds are known to add hiss and things like that to audio if you're trying to boost a weak signal internally. So that's a really good mic for scratch audio for a bunch of scenarios, and even for little pieces to camera and things like that, as long as you're not competing with too much noise, it works really well. And especially with some of the post tools available now, like the voice isolation in DaVinci Resolve, Premiere's got its own AI voice processing features now. There's a bunch of stuff that, when combined with what you capture with this, you can get definitely pretty usable audio with this mic. Personally, I've used products like the A-Box and run shotgun mics and things like that before, and I wouldn't really recommend that setup when I'm using Reds, to be honest, just because you're getting such a weak signal into the camera. I don't think you're really getting the benefit of those better quality mics. So for me, mics like this and also the VideoMic NTG are the best ones to use with Reds for just that all-round usable audio into the camera. You know, it's fairly directional, not as directional as your best quality shotgun mics, but you know, unless you're using a camera that's more like the Canon C series or the Sony, you know, FX series, where you've got dedicated audio dials and things like that, and nice strong preamps, XLR inputs, etc. I wouldn't bother trying to run shotgun mics with a camera like this. So that works really well. Some other little things. So I've got V-Lock on the back, and I've got these Core SWX Nanos. So that's a 150. I've got 2 of them, which is the max that you're allowed to travel with. And I've just recently bought some SmallRig 99 watt Nano V-Locks as well. So I'm traveling with 4 compact V-Locks, and that's plenty to get me through pretty decent shoot days. I mean, batteries like this, these 150s, they're good for a solid 3 hours or more with this setup. So more or less 2 of them will get you through most shoots, but having the extra batteries on standby definitely helps. Now, monitor-wise, I'm running the Atmos Ninja-V here, little 5-inch monitor. Really happy with that. I find the image is pretty nice on these Atmos monitors. good tools, nice to be able to quickly look at your false color, focus peaking, all that kind of stuff which you'd expect. Easy to get frame guides up. You know, you'll do shoots these days where they'll ask you to frame for both 16:9 and 9:16. Every camera operator's worst nightmare, but you know, you can turn those guides on there, play with the opacity, things like that, and do your best to keep within those frame guides. Now with this one here, I've had to buy this add-on unit so that I get the SDI in and out. The red Komodo doesn't do HDMI, so I need that to be able to work with this camera. Another thing that's cool about this is I leave a 1 terabyte SSD in there and have internal recordings going to that as well. Now, reason being for that, I have had the unfortunate scenario of Angelbird Cfast cards failing on me, which luckily that situation could have been a lot worse. It didn't wreck an entire shoot or anything like that, but it could have been pretty bad. Ever since then, I've been running the internal record on this. So, you know, for example, you could be running 6K Red RAW internally to the Komodo and 4K ProRes LT onto there. And, you know, even if you're just clearing it at the end of each day, it's just nice knowing that if anything does go wrong with the internal recording, that you do have that backup. Now, on that same note, yeah, running Angelbird Cfast cards. So these are 1 terabyte cards. I've got 2 of them. I bought a 2-pack when there was a special on it, B&H. So 2 1 terabyte cards, all you need. Really good for doco shooting because that's plenty of space, especially if you're in 4K ProRes or 6K ELQ, both file types which I think are great for documentary, really good quality and really efficient. So yeah, running them, 1 terabyte cards, plenty of room to work with. But you know, with what I was mentioning in mine before about sometimes things do go wrong. And look, it's not just an Angelbird thing. I'm sure it would happen with other brands as well. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have any problems with the old red mini mag and full size mag SSDs, but I have heard of many people having problems with these. So one little tip I might throw in at this point is try to, at minimum, if you can, do a wrangle halfway through the day and switch to the other card, get things all backed up before you have to go back to this. It might be tempting to wait till you fill one of these, but you know, the problem is if something goes wrong, like the situation I had, none of the data was recoverable, even when I sent it to Angelbird. So where possible, it's probably actually better protocol to shoot to smaller cards and dump them more regularly, so things are just getting backed up and all your eggs aren't in one basket. Because I mean, you could do multiple days of shooting on one of these 1 terabyte cards for certain things. But yeah, definitely wrangling and backing up as often as practical is a good way of doing things. So yeah, that's the base kit I've got here, and yeah, I've just been super happy with it. Good for battery life, good for media, nice files. Like I find the red Komodo still really stands up as giving nice accurate colors, and you know, you can get creative looks in the grade with it, but it's just I think it's a really good documentary camera and still stands up against newer offerings like the Canon C400 and things like that as far as the end results and practical mix of formats and things like that go. Now, one other thing to mention with this setup, I actually have the Meike RF to EF with variable ND adapter here as well. So here's that. I've been really happy with this. So you can either have the variable ND inside, or you can take that out and replace it with the clear one if you're in a darker environment. Again, I've found the color shift or lack of color shift to be pretty good with this adapter. Look up the CVP review if you're unfamiliar with that product. It stood up really well against the Canon alternative. What I've been doing lately is also running a hard stop filter on the outside, because I mean, I guess the general concept with variable NDs from my experience is do what you can, not to be pushing it to the max. So what I'll do is I've got these Nisi IR-ND hard stop adapters, which have 0 color shift and 0 IR pollution. So with this setup in bright environments, what I've been doing is just leaving this, normally this 3-stop filter on the lens, and then finessing my exposure using the Vari ND, because at least that means I'm not having to push the variable ND too far, which is when you're probably going to start to notice issues. Now, another thing I've been running with this setup is this Tiffin Black Pro Mist. I've got a 1/4 and a 1/8. I find that on the Sigma is pretty good just for taking that edge off things a little bit. So as I change lenses, I'll basically just switch those filters over and put them on the outside. And yeah, look, between those two lenses, 18 to 35, 50 to 100, both with constant f1.8 apertures, I found that's a really good versatile run and gun setup that I've been really happy with, and continues to make this a practical workhorse for me. I just checked, the red Komodo's been out for about 4 years now, and I think I've had mine for about 3.5, so it's going really well. I am starting to keep an eye on other cameras, but definitely for my Doco branded and commercial work, this has been working really well. The next thing I'll just cover is what I've been using for sound. So I've already mentioned that I have this Rode guy on here for just general Atmos and in-camera kind of sound. But the other important part of my kit is these Rode Wireless Pros. So that's what this interview's been recorded on now. Yeah, they come with this little charging case. They got really good battery life, and you just put them in here when you're not using them and they'll charge up, and USB-C connection on the back. So very travel friendly to quickly put them all back in this case and charge them up, and you never have battery issues with them, more or less. And I'll run through 2 little scenarios with how I use these mics on shoots where I'm doing the sound as well. And I'm trying to quickly give myself the maximum amount of sound options. So one thing I do is I always use the internal recording on these. I find it better quality, and also you just know it's never going to peak. So I've set mine up so that I have this button on the top left as a record button. I'll hit that around the same time as I hit record on the camera, and it's fairly easy to sync up. All editing programs have some kind of auto align or audio sync option using the waveforms now, so it's really easy to synchronize as long as you keep everything pretty organized. And I use these mics in 2 ways. One way is recording to these little units here. So for example, I've got the little magnet on here at the moment. You might go sit that up on a lectern if you're wanting to get a bit of dialogue going down up there. You might sit it in a car somewhere near where the person's driving. There's a bunch of stuff you can hide these and get a pretty good signal with them, especially with the little fluffy on top to make sure you're not going to get any wind interference. Yeah, super handy for that. The other way I use these, which is how I'm using it now to do this interview, is using the lapel mics that they come with. And so the way I've been doing it, which I find works really easy, is buy packs of these Rycote stickies. You can buy them from any kind of decent sized camera or audio store. It's just a little double-sided sticker. I put that on the back and I stick these to the inside of the shirt. If someone has a collared shirt, that's really easy. I have it to the inside of the collar. T-shirts, I'll either have it stuck just to the inside of the shirt. So right now this one, stuck this there below the collar, kind of like I try to think of the bit of the shirt where it's not going to be rubbing against the skin too much. The general rule of thumb used to be to put it kind of in this area, in the middle of your chest, which is also a great option, but I've found just below the neckline works really well. Also, you can also stick it directly to people's skin. That's another good one. Yeah, you just want to make sure you're not going to get any rustle from the cable. So, you know, what a lot of people do is tie kind of a little loop in it that they have a few inches underneath the microphone, tape that down if you're putting it to the skin. But yeah, I found these mics work pretty well. I was a little bit sus on them when I first got them because the way I have this set up, the mic's facing out, which I would have thought means it's more prone to rubbing against things as opposed to if the mic was on top here. But I've actually found they're pretty good. Sound quality is pretty good, and yeah, just do what you can to get it in a position where the rustle will be minimized, rustle, rubbing, anything like that. Always chuck your headphones on and give it a bit of a test. And I would also advise always using the internal recording on these as well, because it will never cease to amaze you how many things there are that can go wrong with audio. So things like the backup internal recording that doesn't clip has been a massive game changer for me. Anyway, that's my setup. Hit me in the comments if you have any questions, and hope you found this video useful.